than civil rights. Human rights are provided for you by virtue of your birth, by virtue of the fact that you're a human being. You're entitled to life, you're entitled to liberty, you're entitled to a fair trial, you're entitled to freedom of speech. They're basic rights derived from the phenomenon of your existence. Civil rights is a narrower category. Civil rights derives from constitution. Civil rights derives from your membership in a particular community, which has certain rules and laws and regulations that can vary. How you can vote, how you can exercise some of the freedoms. It's a narrower category. Human rights, the evolution of human rights goes back to the Enlightenment, to Hutchison, especially to John Locke and various philosophers. Took a lot of cake at the concept. John Rawls, the philosopher, is a very prominent recent exponent of some of the ideas. And in terms of its encapsulation of what human rights is, our best guide right now is that which was put together in 1948 by the United Nations Universal Charter of Human Rights. That's the baseline. In Canada, we have our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which also spells it out. In the European Union, there's also the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then there is civil rights, which is a narrower concept. Now, what's important to know is that there is a lot of how should I say, the borderline between human rights and civil rights is very porous. Okay? Very often, what is human rights spills into civil rights, and what is civil rights spills into human rights. It's a porous, impervious, I guess, boundary. And where I happen to be active, where I play, and where I hang out, is this border zone, this interzone between human rights and civil rights. And what I try to do, for strategic reasons, is to raise the image, the ante of civil rights to the level of human rights. The problem with civil rights is that because it is country bound, it's constitutional bound, as I define. It's relevant to a particular society, a particular country. Very often, civil rights violations are not addressed by global powers, and so very often, civil rights violators, governments that violate civil rights, get away with murder because nobody will interfere, because it's domestic affairs within that country. We can't meddle in the affairs of a country. Nobody bothered the United States when blacks were subjugated in the southern states because it was a civil rights issue. And it took Malcolm X and a number of others, civil rights fighters, to raise the issues to the human rights level that global attention was focused at it. So this is what I do. This is my strategy. I try to take civil rights issues, abuse issues within a particular country, in this case Hungary, because that's what I'm working with. I mean, I could be focusing on a number of countries, but there's only a limit to one's attention and involvement. I'm accidentally Hungarian focused because I come from, I could be Uganda focused. There's just so much one can do. So this is what I do. I'm trying to raise civil rights abuses to the level of human rights abuse and trying to get world attention to it and trying to get something done about things that I am convinced on the basis of factual evidence is harming the interest of the people that live within that community. Okay? So we know about what human rights is, we know what civil rights is. A couple of things about politics and communications. Politics, as I mentioned very flippantly at the beginning, and I'll be even more flippant now, is something that is a response to what Mick Jagger sang about a few years ago. You can't always get what you want. Politics is a response to that phenomenon. Every society, every community has a scarcity of values. Money, access, opportunities, and so on and so forth. We can't always get what we want. So we invented politics. We invented politics as the system by which we decide who gets what, when, and how. That's what politics is all about. Who gets what, when, and how. Now, you know, it's interesting to note that, as a footnote, that societies are schizoid. We don't talk about this, but societies are really schizoid. So societies are borderline personalities. Societies have multiple identities. Every society is composed of elderly people who have different identities, different desires, different needs, different agendas than teenagers or young people. The agendas of the unemployed are different from the agendas of the employed. The agendas of the poor are different from the agendas of the rich. No need to emphasize. Politics and social life is involved about discussions of how these conflicts are to be resolved. And democratic societies are societies where these conflicts are resolved peacefully through discourse, through a process whereby the opposing points of view are provided with opportunities to test the validity of competing claims for the public interest. The ability to test the competing claims of different groups. If an individual had a multiplicity of identities, we put them into a mental institution, we classify them as mentally ill, we do all kinds of stuff with them, you know, drug them, and years ago we jailed them, and you know, there's all kinds of nasty things. Societies can get away with being screwed up, okay? In comparison to individuals. But it's important that you know this difference, that what societies are not individuals, but a composite of competing claims for scarce values. And you cannot say that a single perspective is right and everybody else is wrong, that it's my way or the highway. Democracy is not about that. Democracy is about adjudicating these conflicts. My problem with Hungary, just to go one step ahead, and with other societies where democracy is under threat, is that these competing claims are not being allowed to be played out. There's no opportunity for certain points of view that is dissonant with the